want to go down this river, but there are so many rocks. Rivers are always changing. And one thing that's for certain is that rivers flow in very defined ways. Rivers are on hills. If they weren't on a hill, they would be ponds or lakes. So the steeper that hill, the faster the current. And also the more water that's there, and how deep the water is, and the placement of the rocks is really going to set up some obstacle courses. Okay, so then I go on. Oh, yes, before we go further, let's talk about directions. Now, if the water is coming down this way, that's upstream. This would be downstream. And when we're facing downstream, this is river left and this is river right.
Would it be smooth? The water surface would be smooth.
Sorry?
The water surface would be smooth?
Yes. Yes, the water surface would be smooth coming down this hill unless there are obstructions like rocks or branches. And there are of every imaginable size and shape.
Rocks under the surface?
And there are also rocks that are just under the surface, which we call pillows, that are really easy to get hung up on.
Water flows around the lake.
Okay. When water flows around a rock, then it creates a wave. So here's a rock. And here's the water flowing down. And that's a wave. This upstream pointing wave is not where you want to go because that's where the rock is. So if you are paddling or tubing down and you're heading for that, you're going to get upset.
Just downstream.
Okay. Thank you, you're really good. Just downstream of this rock, because these waves are here, there's a little pocket formed. And water flows into that pocket, and it actually flows upstream into that pocket. This upstream flowing configuration is called an eddy. And every rock and every branch is going to have an eddy behind it. When we're in our boat, we can tuck one end of the boat into that upstream flowing water, can't we? And then what happens? We've got this, and
It'll spin.
spins right around into that eddy. And that eddy water is going upstream, and it's going to kind of nudge your boat right in there. So that's like a good parking spot or a place to stop and have lunch, have a sandwich or something, because that boat's not really going to move very much. It's really fascinating. Well, that's crazy. So let's say you want to get out of that eddy. You're going to back up a little bit and then turn the one end out into the current. What's going to happen? Exactly what happened, but we were going the other way. This current's going to turn you out, and then you can get out into the current. So the more you play with this stuff, and I've been playing with this stuff for like 40 years, it's absolutely magic. It's really cool. So it's also possible for you to cross this current big rushing current, huge waves. So you can get your boat set up so it's just out a little bit. Now, what's going to happen? You've got this current pushing the boat downstream. You've got this current because you're creating a little eddy behind that boat. And ever take a watermelon seed and pop it like that? That's exactly what happens with a boat. It just crosses just like that, called a ferry. And then that's really crazy because you can ferry through some big, like 3-4 foot waves and maintain the right angle. There you go. And you go back and forth. So there's a lot to this whitewater stuff. It's really fun.
And then what defines the different like classes of rapids? Is it all about like the slope of the...
The classes of rapids have to do with the slope, with the speed.
Okay.
It has to do with the configuration of the obstructions. It also has to do with the level of paddling you need to maneuver through there. But it also, and a lot of people forget this, has to do with the ability to rescue somebody. And that ability is based on, is it close to a riverbank or a highway? Another thing that factors into that is temperature, right? Because you can capsize out here, say in early March, and by the time you get to shore, you're like hypothermic. Hypothermia is great. You can define it as mumbles, jumbles, umbles, and stumbles, or grumbles and stumbles. So if someone's exhibiting those 4 characteristics, you know it's time to run low. Yeah, so lots of times people will look at a rapid and say, oh, that's a class 2. Well, it depends. You know, the river's cold here because it comes out of the bottom of the dam. You could have a very sunny day, 80, 90 degrees. But if you have water that's going by here at, say, 45 or 50 degrees, that's pretty cold. And do you know why this stuff's called white water? Because it's white, yes. But do you know what causes it to be white? Air bubbles. So this is a great example of white rock. Now, if there are 2 rocks that are close together, this obviously will have a wave, and this will have a wave that we talked about before. And there's a downstream pointing V, and that's where you want to go to safely go between these rocks. So let's do a quick review. An upstream pointing wave is going to be what you get upset on. You go down the downstream pointing wave. Help me out.
Get upset on the upstream pointing V waves. And get upset on the upstream pointing V waves.
Okay, more.
Okay. If you cannot decide which side of the upstream.
Got it. Okay. So let's say you're coming down and there's this rock here with these waves you can see. And you can't decide whether to go this way or that way. What's probably going to happen is you're going to get swept into this rock and the boat's going to capsize. If that happens, get away from that boat because the force of this water is going to push you against that obstruction.
Take your time.
So, take your time, figure out which way the water is going so you can safely go down this rocky river. And kind of puzzle it out and have a great time. It takes a while to learn all of these flow patterns. Have fun. Okay. So, Stefan, what do you think? Does that do the trick?